Marysville Roundtable, a discussion on current events, sports, and entertainment.
The last time we saw the varsity wrestling team in action, they had finished their season with a tough loss in districts. This year, they're looking to bounce back and take the division title. Joining us today is Coach Pajecki and senior wrestler Jacob Tunich. Thanks for coming in. How are you guys?
Doing great. Thanks for asking.
I'm doing great.
It's good to hear. So I've heard some legends about preseason conditioning. Can you tell me what that would look like?
Our preseason conditioning is more or less trying to get the wrestlers in a physical form to where they can handle a sport as tough as wrestling. There's a lot of things. Everybody talks about our 7-mile run. What we do is at the end of conditioning, we'll go down to St. Clair, drop them off at the mall, and then they run back to the school. It's kind of good because that's one of our rivalries. So we go right down to their hometown, make it ours, and then we come home.
Well, that segues right into our next question.
Okay.
So what other rivalries do you have?
We have quite a few individual rivalries because with wrestling, it's a lot of individual and team. But St. Clair is the one team that's close to us, and we have to beat them to win the league. We also have to beat them to get out of districts. So that's probably our biggest rival.
I see. So Jacob, I know that wrestling is a mentally and physically challenging sport. What would you say is the hardest aspect?
I would definitely say the hardest aspect is getting over that mental block, especially in practice. One of the hardest things is knowing that you're doing something wrong and then trying to correct it. It really can be a struggle sometimes.
I see. So people are aware of the emphasis that physical and mental strength have. So how is it a mental battle just as much as it is a physical one?
Well, whenever you think about it and you compare it to other sports like, say, football or basketball or anything like that, you've always got somebody that you can pass the ball to or they can pass or block for you. When it's wrestling, you're stepping out there against somebody your weight within 3 pounds, and you are trying to put their back on the mat just as well as they're trying to put your back on the mat. There's nobody to blame if something goes wrong. It's just yourself. And for young athletes, that's pretty difficult to get through because everybody's looking at you. You can't just say, oh, I didn't do good enough and feel good about yourself. And that's where it comes into the preparation for wrestling and the mental aspect of it.
Right, a lot of accountability.
Absolutely.
So I'm not super familiar with the layout of a team and how that operates. So how many do you need to have a full wrestling team?
Well, there are 14 weight classes, and they vary all the way up from 106 pounds all the way up to 285 pounds. And you'll never wrestle somebody that outweighs you by a whole bunch, or you won't wrestle somebody that outweigh. But with wrestling, you have 1v1 on a match, and they wrestle, and you can earn points for your team. The 6 points for a pin. You get 5 points for a technical default, which means you're leading by 15 points. Or a regular point, a major win is 4 points, and then you also have a way to get 3 points if it's just by points that you win.
Okay. So what would a practice look like?
Well, typically we run a pretty tough practice. Our practices are modeled after the collegiate style of wrestling. The way they run it, it's scripted. We will go in, we'll warm up. All the kids will weigh in before practice to see where they're at. And then we will do our warm-ups, our drilling, and then we'll move into technical instruction. Different things that we see that people need to work on. And we also break it up into different levels. If they're new wrestlers, they'll be on this side learning with other new wrestlers, while the seasoned wrestlers will be over on this side. But we will do live wrestling. Practice typically lasts 2.5 to 3 hours, but it's excellent instruction to prepare what we talked about earlier, the mental aspect of wrestling.
It sounds super productive.
It is, and it's a lot of fun. It's intimidating. A lot of kids don't like to come out because it's tough and they hear the rumors, but wrestling in itself, if I didn't wrestle in high school, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. It did everything for my future, and that's why I'm still coaching. So.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. Leadership is an essential part of every team. So who are your senior leaders going into the next season?
Well, Jacob here, and we've got Colin Sabo, and is it Jack or is it Colt? Colt is our other senior, and we have we're a very young team, but our leaders that have been there, they're wrestling pros. They want to go through and they want their team to be successful, so they go out and they lead as good as any leader would do as a captain on a team.
So how do you think you've changed as a person wrestling since freshman year?
So definitely my freshman year, I was a lot more timid and really just kind of scared and didn't know like what to do. But it was at the MAC tournament, and the MAC tournament is huge. There was like 30 teams. We were at a college gym. It was just massive. And I won my first match against an Armada kid, and something just snapped. I started working harder. I started gaining the knowledge and taking it in, and not just gaining it and just like memorizing it. I really understood it. I knew what I had to do. I was thinking 2-3 moves ahead. And now that really translated into my senior year, where I'm hopefully going to build on that and become a better wrestler for not just myself, but to help other people like my teammates succeed.
That's good. So I've never attended a wrestling match before. What would a generic wrestling match look like?
Usually what it'll be is another school will come up, and either at our gym or theirs, and we'll have a mat in the middle of the gym floor, seats lined on both sides. Typically, it used to be to where we always started at the bottom weight class and moved our way up, but that put a lot of pressure on certain people for points at a lot of times and not spreading out that anxiety. So what they do before the matches, the referees will take a bag full of chips with all the weight classes on them. They'll pick, and that's the weight class we'll start at. The guys will go out, they'll shake hands, and they'll start wrestling. And every match is 3 2-minute periods unless you have to go into overtime, but it's always sudden death. There's never a tie.
Okay. So there's no doubt that wrestling is one of the hardest sports mentally and physically. So how do you overcome that?
A lot of running. Running tends to, well, one, it helps my endurance build, but it also clears my mind. I know last year, a couple guys and I would start at my house. We'd run to the water, run through the park, and come back. And I always felt better about my day after, and I felt good because I'm, training, and training to succeed always feels good.
That's good. So sports are about something that's bigger than yourself. So what impact do you want to leave on this program?
I want people, especially the freshmen, to look back and say, I want to be like him. I want to be the guy that he was. I want to have his work ethic. I just want them to have a positive experience so that they come back and tell their friends, maybe someone who's considering it or doesn't do a winter sport, say, hey, this is not just a team, it's a brotherhood. And I want to be that brother to them. Like, I want them to look up and just enjoy themselves at the time that they have here, even though it's not a long time.
Love to hear it. Thanks for coming in today, guys. I really appreciate it.
That was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
The Marysville varsity wrestling team is gearing up for another successful season, and they would love your support. Be sure to cheer them on in as many of their matches as you can attend. Thanks for tuning in. These have been our guests, Coach Pajecki and senior wrestler Jacob Tunich. I'm Carter Stevens for M6, your hometown station.
Marysville Roundtable, a discussion on current events, sports, and entertainment.